Good evening, everybody. Welcome in. We got some post-game basketball to talk about, Michigan style. Rutgers 75, Michigan 67. I'm Dennis Fithian, joined by Jim Scarcelli. Scar, the restart, if you will, of the Big Ten play, turning the page, getting into January, hoping that it was going to be different here for Michigan. They got to play tonight's game out in Piscataway shorthanded. 4 players not available for medical reasons, another because of a personal reason. And, in the end here, Michigan was down 16 in the first half. They were down 9 at the half. And, they cut it to 7 with 6 remaining. But, they end up losing this one, as you see on the score there, by the final of 75-67. So that's an 8-point game. Yeah. How'd you see it?
Yeah, it's a cold, rough night in Piscataway. Now, Jersey Mike's, I love a Jersey Mike sub. Those are good subs. And I just wanted to throw that out. But yeah, Denny, 14-0. The Wolverines we have never lost to Rutgers. And but that Rutgers team is the exact opposite. They got so many guys back. Geo Baker been around for 4 years. Harper been around. They got a bunch of guys with experience, and we got a few guys with experience, but that's a good team. They just beat Purdue there a couple weeks back. That's a tough game for us. And they got, again, people are making shots against us, Denny, and we got to ask ourselves, are these people why are they shooting so well against Michigan? UCF lit it up on us. And now Rutgers lit it up on us. Is it because of our defense, or is it because these guys, we're just running into the people that are real hot against us? I want to know the answer to that question.
Well, if you're asking me my opinion, and I think it's, I don't know if it's a lack of effort. Maybe it could be a lack of intensity. I mean, it sounds like a lack of effort or the overall talent, but, it's a repeated pattern here. I think you're right on top of it. Geo Baker and Ron Harper Jr., they combined for 45 points. Those two guys, and, they made some incredible shots. Yeah, they're rising up and firing, but, we saw it on Thursday with those 2 guys from UCF. They were doing the same thing. Michigan couldn't guard them. I mean, it looked like, Jordan and Pippen out there. And, so you do it one time, you say, okay, these guys were just, in a groove and they had it. But then you go back to the Minnesota game. Remember, Michigan was a 14-point favorite in that game. And their 2 guys, they were lighting it up like they were Isaiah and Joe D back in the day. So, at some point you got to say, hey, it's the other team. Yeah, you give them credit, but it's just you got to be able to get stops and make it more difficult for them. That's the number one thing. There's a lot of things that, with this team where you look at them and, you say, you have to readjust where you're at here in the new year. I was heading into the season thinking that, they would have got my vote for the preseason number 1 in the Big Ten. And, I thought certainly they were a tournament team, the Final Four team. And, all of that obviously hasn't happened. They didn't come together, but, they needed to, with these 18 games remaining, you've got to be above 4 games. You got to be above 500, 4 games above 500 for the NCAA tournament even to consider you. So you needed to win, 10 or 11 of these 18 games. And, they got a rough stretch here and, you get buried. They're really looking up now, even though some of their, like the net ranking looks pretty good. And, some of the other stuff that you look at looks halfway decent for them. The Ken Pom, you look at Rutgers, their numbers were terrible, but Michigan's played, some tough opponents here. But, I just look at it. It's execution and then it's firepower on offense. They just don't have it. I mean, they've got Eli Brooks and they've got Hunter Dickinson, but, the rest of the guys out there, this is a young team that you hope learns from this, but they just don't have the firepower to compete with these other teams offensively. Whether it's a rude awakening or a cold water in your face. I mean, it's not being down on them. It's just like right now, I mean, you can see it. Scar, I'll point you, to the last 6 minutes of the game. I mean, Caleb Houston, so Diabate makes a 3 with and cuts it to 7 points with 6 minutes to go. So everything being said, shorthanded, they're going to make it a game here and getting down where, you're talking about a 3-possession game, but, they've got 4 minutes to go and Caleb Houston, who they're counting on to rain threes this year. I mean, he's wide open from the wing and he just, he throws up an air ball and it hits the glass. He's just not ready. I mean, he's not ready to be a volume shooter. He's not ready, for Big Ten play. I don't know if he's ready for college basketball. I know guys, they progress in different ways and everything. But when you come in and you're a 5-star, you're a top 10 player in the country, you expect a little bit more. And so, if they had somebody else to put in and, you could, maybe put them on the bench, but they don't. And so, this is just who they are.
Yeah. Denny, we were talking earlier and indicating it might be a rough year. We got some young guys with talent. I see Diabate. I see him getting better every week. I see Caleb Houston, young guy, not physically ready, getting better every week. I don't mind getting kicked around. If this is not our year, okay, great. But I don't mind it if those guys stick around. If they're playing for the Wolverines 2, 3, 4 years from now, that we went through the tough times but I'd hate to go through all this and go through these tough times and those two guys bolt for the pros next year. That would be frustrating. And I think that's when you get in trouble. But
well, isn't that, Scott, when you're talking about college basketball now, I've seen it over the years with some of those Kentucky teams, like, and Michigan's class wasn't looking like some of these, these Kentucky teams when it was, John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins. Sometimes these guys come in and, right off the bat, you're like, man, these guys are off to the NBA at the first media timeout. They're that good. And, they're going to the Final Four. But then some of those classes that Kentucky brings in, they're the same, supposedly ranked the same. And, those guys, and they don't make the tournament. And they've got that kind of talent. And they do end up, some of them, half of them, maybe even more than that, going to the pros. That's the gamble. If you take guys that are 5-star and, you want some of those, because you know what, sometimes you do, get this great play. Sometimes you do get, and Hunter Dickinson wasn't even a, 5-star top 10 player, but sometimes you just run into a superstar that's ready to go. And, that's the gamble a little bit that you take that, guys, it's amazing. People will look at, some of the draft experts that look at it and they still have Caleb Houston and, they'll have Diabate, ranked in the first round. People are like, these guys shouldn't even, be starting in the Big Ten, the way that they're playing here. And it's never about that. It's about, where can they be in 2 years? And when you're 18 to 19, you can take those big jumps and NBA teams love projections and they love upside and they love ceilings here. And, that's the thing. That is the thing. But I hear what you're saying. Like, if you knew that Houston, he's going to take his lumps, and same thing with Diabate. He shows these flashes, and if these guys came back next year, and and then elevated their games, you'd say, well, that's worth it. If they leave, you'd feel like, you're, maybe no tournament, that it wouldn't be worth it. So I know right what you're saying. I'm right with you. I think everybody watching and listening is like, what, Scar's right on top of it.
Because, look at the team we lost to tonight. I don't know if those guys are going to be big-time pro basketball players, early draft picks, but, all they do is they've been there for 4 years, and that's how you get it done in basketball. But, and again, another, we talked about winning a championship in football. Sometimes you need things to go your way. Geo Baker, he hasn't played all year hardly. Yep. He's been out, and sure enough, he's back. He's back for the Wolverines. But, just a couple things I'm seeing, Denny. We're a little confused on defense. Some of those times we left, if I had a game plan for Rutgers, it would have been never leave Geo Baker and never leave Ron Harper at the three-point line. And we did too much of that. A lot of it was confusion. Some of those defensive mistakes showed their ugly head again. And, I don't mind seeing Hunter Dickinson shoot 1 or 2 threes a game. Little bit of that, but if people are, sometimes you're open for a reason, Hunter. People they're not really concerned about it that much. But Robbie Hummel made a great point. I would have started every possession trying to get Hunter the ball in the low block. I just think it's the best chance we have trying to get the ball to him on the low block. But if we're going to live and die with Hunter Dickinson taking perimeter shots, it's going to be a long year.
Well, I can hear you on that. It's also going to be a long year. I know Devontae Jones has shown a little bit of progress the last two games, at least in the scoring line and, some of his play. But, tonight he throws up a bagel and 0 of 3 from the floor. I mean, you can't have that, on any team that you're thinking about that you want to be successful. I mean, you can't have your point guard going 0 for, especially – when you don't have anybody and you're shorthanded. I mean, he really needed to step up, and, he was not able to do that. And Caleb Houston, 1 of 8 from downtown. And, Caleb Houston, like the turnovers and, it's the shots that he's getting. Like, that's not like they're in and out or, they're off a little bit. And you just say, oh, that's just a matter of time. He's missing him badly. I think his confidence is, he needs to get an infusion of confidence here. And I don't know where that's going to come from in these games ahead, because Michigan State's going to come in and it might be the best thing for him, because Michigan State's going to guard and put him through a meat grinder. And it is going to be, that's going to be a tough game for him. That'll be a great learning experience, for these young players in Purdue, the athleticism that they bring in. They've got back-to-back games where, if they're turning it over and, casting up missed shots like they have been, and certainly they were tonight. I can't imagine what it's going to look like over these next two games. And then they go to Illinois, a team that blew out Rutgers by 35 points recently, they're in Champaign. So it's daunting. Indiana is ahead here. And, it's hard to see where this team, they just got to get down where they can compete. You want to see them compete and learn.
Yeah, you were making a good point. We were talking earlier that, Houston's supposed to be a senior in high school. Is he 17 years old now?
Well, he reclassified. I think he's 18. So, yeah, I mean,
you can just see he hasn't been in the weight room. He's going to be a totally different kid in 2-3 years. And I just hope we get to see him. You think, I look at him, I see a young Isaiah Livers, and Isaiah Livers was, he was a lot like what we're seeing from Houston. So I hope but I do see a little bit of improvement, in defense of Jones. Danny, I was watching him. Rutgers was really giving him a lot of attention defensively. I think because of what he did last week against UCF, he was not getting open. They were not leaving him at the 3-point line. They were leaving other guys. So I think part of, some of the over and the lack of shots, I think, was because he was getting a lot more attention than he had normally been getting.
Yeah, well, let's be honest. We mentioned the guys being out, Frankie Collins and Zeb Jackson, were two of them. I mean, there's, your two backup guards to Jones. So he was going to have to log a lot of minutes, and he did. I mean, Jace Howard played a little bit, and Kobe Buffkin came in, but they didn't have Brandon Johns, Terrence Williams, Frankie Collins, Jaron Falls as well, though. So you're down. They called Johns, Williams, and Collins for medical reasons, and then with Zeb, a personal issues, whatever that is. So then you look towards, Saturday, who knows? I mean, so you automatically think about with COVID and, the, whatever the restrictions are, 10 days. I don't know if it's down to 5 in Big Ten or college basketball, but if it's 10, those guys could miss the Michigan State Purdue games. I don't know. That's up in the air.
I'll tell you, what there's some things that are positive. I think they're doing a good job with Diabate coaching him up, because he has really developed some offensive moves. He's getting better. He's got moves away from the bucket. I could see him in 2 years being a consistent 3-point threat, a real problem. You can see where he's going to be a good pro. It's just how long is he going to be in Ann Arbor? But I see improvement from him on the low block. He still makes a few mistakes, but I don't have any doubt in my mind he needs to be starting for the Wolverines above. In my opinion, I think he has solidified that for me.
Yeah, well, when you go back, sorry to cut you off, you go back to the beginning of the year, a lot of times when you look at a college basketball team and you're saying, okay, how good do you think they're going to be and everything, you go to the returning players and you go to the guys that are going to be seniors. And Brandon Johns was one of those guys, and he came in when Isaiah Livers got hurt last year, played pretty well in the tournament. And you're thinking, you're hoping, you're expecting, because you've seen it before. Guys make these big jumps when they're seniors, it's their last time and all those things. And, Johns didn't take that jump. And it would be nice. And it would be nice if Diabate, like Hunter Dickinson last year, you just finally, you couldn't hold him back. You had to put him there in the starting lineup. And there was a little bit of that with Diabate. But, man, if you had Brandon Johns there as well, and you don't have that dynamic with those two guys. And I think also as the freshman, Terrence Williams was another guy you're hoping, he got some run last year. He would come in. He was a rotational guy, with that nice team that won the Big Ten last year. So you're thinking, hey, maybe he's ready for a bigger role and a step up, a few flashes. But, those are the things. And, when you get a guy that up transfers like Devontae Jones, those are wild cards, as we've seen. Last year they hit the jackpot, with Brooks. I'm sorry, Mike Smith and Shondae Brown. I mean, they really hit the jackpot with those two guys coming in, what they were able to do. But so I say all this. It sounds like, I'm beating them down and everything. It's just, you had those preseason expectations, and then you get into the new year. There's nothing but Big Ten games left. So, tonight was a real big game for them. They're shorthanded, and they had. I think they fight a little bit, but when you're fighting a little bit there, and you still see some of the turnovers, and they just don't have the firepower offensively. It's and what they have ahead. I think you're trying to think what could be a good season the rest of the way. You already mentioned it. Hoping that maybe some of the guys could come back, and you're looking for progress, and progress anyway inside of games, even if they're not winning them, from some of the young players, and and hoping they can play better than they have. That's it.
Yeah, I'm looking at the score here though. 67 points for Michigan isn't terrible, and we should, if we're going to have a chance to win, we almost have to be able to win with 67 points. We just needed to play better defense against Rutgers tonight. But I like Buffkin. I like him. He shows me that he's a threat, taking the ball to the hole, and he's a threat as a shooter. So he's a kid that I'm still pretty high on. I thought Jace Howard did pretty good in there tonight, Denny. He we haven't seen him play much, and he got some clock tonight, and I thought he was he was respectable out there, Jace Howard.
You know what I think? I like where you're at. Like I watch Michigan basketball games, no matter what the situation, no matter what the year, or anything else. So you get to a point. This week is going to be a real meat grinder for them, and I think it's going to be tough, and they're probably going to take some lumps. But after they get by, Michigan State, Purdue, Illinois, Indiana, I think that's where you're looking for guys, like Kobe Buffkin. You get in there and you're just hoping and looking, for the future, and hope that they can mold into something. And even this year that you can see him, I know it sounds like I'm rolling out the gallows and everything. I feel like that, but I know seasons can turn on a dime, and young players can really take huge steps forward. And I'm not down on the coaching staff. I'm not really down on the players. It's just, this is where it's at right now. And I think because of the lofty expectations, and I had them myself, it's just, it's a reality check,
Yeah. Danny, I played and coached, and I put myself back into Juwan Howard's chair now. And this is when a coach is really, really challenged. This is when you're challenged, your senior leadership and your coaching staff. I mean, things are not going great for them, and they got Michigan State coming in. And if things get, he is really going to be tested as a leader to keep that team together, keep those guys fighting, keep them believing, keep them from pointing the finger at each other. That's what's really hard to do as a coach when you're starting to go through something like what they're going through. and Hunter Dickinson and Brooks, those guys got to really, really, along with the coaches, keep that team together.
Yeah, I hear you. So, yeah, Saturday's the next game for this group, and it's going to be a 2:30 start. College football over, except that one game that's going to be taking place on Monday. People are like, wow, what am I going to do on Saturday? So, are you going to watch college basketball? And your first chance is this great rivalry between Michigan and Michigan State, and there's, we'll see. You start saying like, well, if you got any pride, I don't know about any of that kind of stuff. What are the expectations as you look towards Michigan State? I'll go first, Scar. I just know, Tom Izzo relishes these situations. He's going to have his guys coming in. They're going to be chest to chest. They play physical. They grind you out. The way that they play offensively and the way that Michigan's guarding, I don't really like their chances. And then who knows with the uncertainty of the players that are going to be here. So, this is going to be a real tough one, but, one where, you can learn a lot in a game like this. That's how I see it coming up Saturday.
Yeah, Michigan State's going to play great defense. They're going to try to rebound. They're going to push you around and try to out-rebound you. They're going to try to get layups. Things we talked about we'd like to see Michigan do. They're going to push the ball. So we got to get back on defense. We can't let them get second shots. And, maybe we'll have the Michigan team that shot the ball like we did against Nebraska. I've watched Michigan State play 6-7 times already this year. And, they're like us. They've had great games shooting and days they look terrible. So, hopefully, we got a comment here. Dickinson Bingham is going to be a good matchup. Bingham will be a big. You're right. And in fact, Bingham is a guy that is exactly what you want. In that guy is stuck around. He's paid his dues. He's grinded. He got pushed around, and now you see that he's been in the weight room and. And Bingham he's a solid player for them, man. He's a problem protecting the basket, and but hopefully we'll get the better of him. But I see Diabate Diabate could be a lot better than Bingham, but hopefully he'll be around. But yeah, it's going to be a challenge for us because they're going to be be emotional. Hopefully our crowd can be a factor.
Great point. You mentioned Juwan Howard, the head coach. The football head coach was in the news today. Not by his choice, maybe. There's some reports, The Athletic, for one, saying that the Raiders and the Chicago Bears have an interest in Jim Harbaugh, and that interest may be mutual. When you heard that news, Jim, what did you think? That there's a possibility? Just that this time of year, what did you make of him?
Well, he's proven it at that level. He's definitely a proven coach at the NFL level. He finally got us it took a little longer than we would have hoped to get us to the point where we won a Big Ten championship. I don't know what's going on in his head. I know guys that have coached college football for 25 years, and I know guys that coach pro football for a long time. Guys I played with and guys I know, and in a lot of cases they talk about recruiting. The grind of recruiting and how demanding that is to have to go deal with 17-year-old kids in different situations to recruiting. In pro football, you don't have to deal with that. And the year-long calendar isn't as demanding from a time standpoint. So, look, I want what's best for Michigan, but Jim is a teammate of mine, so I want what's best for him. He's got. I know he likes Ann Arbor. I do know that. His folks are there in Ann Arbor, and that would be a tough thing for him to leave. But our program is really on solid footing now. From a football standpoint, but I could definitely see, where the Raiders and the Bears would want him. I would want him too in a minute.
Yeah. Well, he's such an outlier because, usually when it's successful college coaches that go to the pros and then they don't make it in the pros and then they go back to college. Well, Harbaugh did this the other way around. He went to the pros, is really successful in the pros. I don't need to lay out, what he did there at San Francisco, going to the Super Bowl, damn near went to another one, and then going down to college. You just don't do that. You don't see that from pro coaches. I mean, he would have been hired if he wouldn't have been hired in the first cycle there. He would have been in the second one for sure. I mean, you could have guaranteed that. And so, those first couple of years, people thought with good reason, like, hey, NFL teams are going to want him. And then last year with the possibility of, maybe him wanting to go there, you always have to have a coach, bringing him in and having to pay a big buyout and saying, well, just 2 wins, that was going to be a tough. Now it's not a tough sell. So, and you know what, on the other side, I noticed that, and I'm like you, I want the best for Michigan. I'll root for Jim wherever he goes. I mean, if he ended up going somewhere in the pros, I would root for him. I like him that much, but you get Michigan fans that are so close to the situation that they're pointing to what you do, and they're good points. His kids are in school here, they're young. They want some. He has talked about how much that his parents are right here. I mean, I think they really do like Ann Arbor, but there's the other side to say, hey, you know what? Does he ever have any inkling or desire to go back into the pros? Because if he does, now's the time. I mean, we know that the Bears drafted him. We know that is it Mark Davis now, Al Davis's son, that they have a relationship there. And the possibility, we don't even know if they're not going to make the playoffs.
I don't know if you know this, Denny, but Jim actually worked with the Raiders as an analyst way back in the day.
Yeah, right when he was done, right?
Yep, I remember talking to him when he was working as an analyst, but.
So he's got the connection there. And the one thing is, like, you could say, well, he could always do it some other time. Well, there's no guarantee for sure with anything, but, he may look at the situation with Ohio State. He saw how long and how tough it was to finally get over that hump. And, there's no guarantee going down next year to Columbus or in the future years that they're going to have this kind of year. He also may have looked at the college football playoff and said, you know what, Georgia, Bama, this was their best shot. And, the way Texas A&M's coming on, I don't know. Those all things could be factored, could be negotiations just to speed everything up, just to sweeten the deal a little bit, even though, who knows about any of that. So, but it is that time of year. And, the one part, if you have a good coach, you realize that, other teams are going to be coming after him all the time. So it's something you have to deal with. And so, that's it, without making any predictions or knowing for sure. I mean, there's a little bit on both sides, that you could think about and make cases for either one. So we'll see. They could end this speculation pretty quick, signing a new deal here, which we think is forthcoming. So
you know what, Denny?
Ann Arbor, make it happen.
Yeah, Jim hasn't come out though and said anything denying that, which is. I remember. I feel for the players. Me. My thing is always about the players. Period. And I remember going through this after my freshman year when Texas A&M was trying to buy Schembechler. They were throwing a boatload of money at him, and I remember being a player and being just that empty feeling, man. That this guy recruited me and these coaches recruited me, and being a head coach, if he gets that job, there's still guys that aren't going to have jobs. Some of his guys on his staff. So I know he cares about his coaches.
Sure.
And I know he loves Michigan, and so I don't know what's going to happen, but I do believe Michigan needs to pay him. I think he stepped up, took the pay cut. And I think that says something, and I think he's proven now that he deserves to be paid at the top of the scale for Big Ten coaches.
Well, and that scale has really skyrocketed. Usually, when you're thinking about the NFL, you say, "Well, you just can't compete when you're in college." But looking at Mel Tucker, that just got the $95 million. Looking at what James Franklin just signed, Jim, I think I don't think many people would bat an eyelash, if he's getting, $90, $100 million. And the Raiders just gave John Gruden $100 million. I don't know what that buyout ended up being because they had to fire him, but I don't know. Are the Bears going to, are they going to really offer more money than Michigan? I I think the money play, and money's always a factor somehow. He would get more money. He just go. He can name his price really to stay at Michigan. So he's in a great position. That's what happens when you go out there and you beat Ohio State and you win the Big Ten. So keep doing that. The world's your oyster. You go out there and you beat Ohio State, you win, the world's your oyster. So it's good to beat Jim Harbaugh right now. He can make any move he wants, and
Hey, things, our program is doing good. Our recruits look good. That kid in the All-Star game, Moore, was outstanding.
Yes, he was.
And we got the big center coming in from Virginia. Things are up for Michigan, man. We got 2 good coordinators, bunch of good assistant coaches, and I just hope that we keep this thing going. But we'll see how it plays out.
All right, Scar, you got a final thought? That seemed like a pretty final thought from you.
Yeah, hey, let's. I'm focusing on these players, and I'm hoping Jim shuts it down and Ward antes up with a good fair offer and locks our coach in for the next 10 years. That's what I'd love to hear. That'd be a great Christmas gift.
I want to lock you in later this week, whether it's going to be on Thursday or after Saturday's game. So we'll see what we can do to lock you in.
I'll be ready, Denny. Ready to roll.
All right, Scar. Have a great night. We'll talk to you later this week.
Go Blue.
There he is, Jim Scarcelli. Thanks for watching. Good night.